Okay, hello everybody. Today we are with famous collector Claude Reich, and I wanted to start our meeting um with Gautam Kadman's music for Kyrgyzstan. Okay. Hello, Mr. Claude Reich. How are you?
Good.
I'm very happy to have you here, and
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
okay. So. I'm very happy to be with you. I just closed. Yeah, closed. Okay. Thank you very much for accepting to be with us, Mr. Claude Reich. This is an art economics course. I've been teaching this for about 15 years now, and normally this is a course where we visit lots of galleries, we go to auctions, and however, with the lockdown, we are in our homes and uh, try to learn art market from a distance. However, thanks to Zoom, we have the possibility to get connected with major art market participants. Thank you for being with us.
Well, you're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, so could you tell us a bit about your collecting story? Is it a family tradition, or you started with something which triggered you?
It's not a family tradition. My parents were not at all into art. It started in the mid 80s. My father had a good friend of his in Belgium who happened to be a contemporary art collector. And he took us, me and my brother, to his home for a weekend. And I didn't know anything about art. Must have been 1983 or 4. And we arrived at his home in Brussels. And when he opened the door, I was greeted by a hanging Calder mobile, a black Calder mobile, which he still has, by the way. And that was like a shock to me. I'd never seen a Calder mobile in the flesh. I had heard vaguely of Calder, but not knowing exactly what he did. So that was my first real contact with what at the time was contemporary art. And then we entered the house, and in the living room there were two large paintings by Dubuffet, which I can remember as if it were yesterday. And obviously I didn't know who Jean Dubuffet was at the time, but I
What
thought,
a house! What a house!
yeah. Uh, I mean, it was like a second shock because I thought those two paintings were absolutely beautiful. And I'd never heard of Jean Dubuffet at the time, and he was still alive. And then I turned around and there were two fantastic paintings by Serge Polyakov, who maybe is not as well known as he used to be, but Serge Polyakov was a wonderful abstract painter, French abstract painter. And those two paintings were really masterpieces by Polyakov. And on it went. There were two Fontanas, there were another Calder, there was a fantastic Basquiat drawing. So that was really the first shock I had. So and it had never crossed my mind that someone would, be able to own those things. So it was a shock. So we spent the weekend there, and the guy told me about his collection a little bit, what it meant to him, and so on, how he started. And that's how I got the bug, more or less. So I started following the market, following the contemporary art market. I quickly realized that first I didn't have any money, so I couldn't, I was just an observer at the time. I couldn't afford those. And since my parents were not at all into it, there was no way I could own, even indirectly, any piece of art. So I started going to the auctions in Paris at the Drouot, and I just watched. Then I quickly realized that if you want to understand contemporary art, you have to understand what comes before that. And what comes before that is Picasso, is Cézanne, is the Renaissance, and so forth. So I started reading books. And all while reading books, I would go to every single exhibition that I could find in Paris. I remember a Kandinsky exhibition at the Beaubourg. I will remember a Botticelli exhibition at the Louvre. So that kind of thing. And the bug kept growing and growing and growing. And I think it was 1988, I went to an exhibition at the Pompidou Center of an artist I'd never, ever heard about before, called Cy Twombly. And that exhibition was really an eye-opener. Those were works that I had never seen anything like it. I mean, I really knew Jackson Pollock was, of course, Rothko, Pollock, Klein, and all those those big abstract American painters from the New York school. But Twombly really was something that I had never seen before, and that was really an eye opener. And it was a drawing exhibition. There were like 100 drawings by Cy Twombly, and in 1988, Twombly was in really in the midst of creation. He was still working a lot and creating important works. So that really opened my mind. And then little by little, I started going to galleries. I started to have the means to travel. So I went to New York, I went to London, I saw contemporary art galleries and so on. And for the first time in 2000, I went to Art Basel. So the year 2000 was the first year when I went to Art Basel, and it was also the first year when I started having the means to buy something.
Until 2000, you haven't bought anything?
No.
Oh.
Well, just I didn't have the money. I mean, I wish I could have bought, but unfortunately,
But you accumulated information as well. That's very important.
I mean, I've been following the market ever since 1985, 6, I'd say. So I probably knew more of the market than many private collectors at the time. But the only problem is that just I couldn't afford that. And when someone tells you that contemporary art was cheap in the past, I can tell you it was not cheap. As far as I know, ever since I followed the market, and that's now nearly 35 years, 25 years, I'm sorry, I'm not that old, 25 years roughly. Contemporary art has always been very expensive, whatever people say. So I just couldn't afford it. I started being able to afford that around 2000, yes. And in 2000, I bought my first painting, which was a painting by Jean Dubuffet in a Belgian gallery. They were exposing at Art Basel. Art Basel was already a major fair at the time. So basically, that's how I came to art collecting.
So now you can describe your collection. So you started with Dubuffet and you wanted to follow with his friends, with his generation?
No, it's not a matter of a generation, tribe, or friends. I had read a lot before that. So really, when I started buying, I knew the market, and I knew a pretty good bit of art history. So I knew who I was attracted to. Obviously, Cy Twombly, ever since that Pompidou show. Dubuffet, and another 3 or 4 artists. And ever since, I've been focusing on those, I would say 5 artists. Those artists are Dubuffet and Twombly, Morandi, Robert Ryman, and last but not least, Philip Guston. So that's, I don't pretend to have an all-encompassing knowledge of art. So I figured that I should limit myself to to 5 or 6 names, which I try to do. And only now am I branching out to more cutting edge contemporary stuff because of the outlandish prices which those artists have reached. So as I have limited means, I have to find something else to collect. But so far I've been fortunate enough to stick to those artists.
So you started to sell some of these works that you have collected?
Well, I've always sold and bought. I've always there are a few cliches that you hear in the market. For instance, the 3D, death, debt, and divorce, which are mainly the 3 reasons you have to sell. To me, there's another reason: you sell to upgrade your collection. So that's always what I'm doing. I sell pieces to buy better pieces, or pieces that I consider better ones than the ones I've had. So as much as possible, that's why I sell, basically. So I sell much seldom than I buy. I try to keep it as little as possible. But you do have to sell, otherwise, unless you're Bill Gates, obviously, and I'm not Bill Gates.
So what are the key elements, factors, topics which make you to decide to own a particular work of art?
Well, first of all, my collecting activity is a full-time job. So I do this and only this. To be an active, serious, effective collector, I think you have to give it your all. That is, if you have other activities, you have to have an art advisor. You have to have someone else to help you. So this means that I read a lot, I see a lot. As much as I can, I see art in the flesh. So the artists I collect, I tend to know their work as thoroughly as possible. So when there is a work on the market, first I have to be able to afford it, obviously. And once I can afford it, I immediately know if within the body of work of, let's say, Philippe Gaston or Ryman or Dubuffet, within their body of work, I immediately know if it's a good or an average or a bad work, because I don't know of any artist who hasn't had their ups and downs, and there are many. So basically, that's how I choose. I immediately know if the work is good or not. So if the work is good and I can afford it, then I don't hesitate. I'm a pretty fast decider in the matter, meaning that I make up my mind really rather fast once I know the work is good.
Now, what do you think of this lockdown? Some people purchase lots of works online, and
Yes.
$1 million worth of works are sold online. Are you close to this idea of buying online?
I'm not close to this idea, but unfortunately, there is no other way right now to buy art. So or to sell art, as a matter of fact. So I mean, it wouldn't have crossed my mind until last year to buy something I hadn't seen in the flesh. Obviously, when you buy art, there are. I mean, it's not only the fact of liking or not liking a work. You have to know if the condition is good. You have to know all sorts of physical aspects of the work, because it's a lot of money that's involved before you buy it. So obviously online, you tend not to have the same angle of approach. It's very difficult to know online if a work is in good condition or not. And with works from the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, especially works on paper, for instance, it is very important to know that, to have that bit of information. To me, the only way to be sure about that is to see the work in the flesh. So it is a certain hindrance for me. The fact that I'm confined to my flat and I can't really see the work in the flesh. But if I have to, if I'm sure about the work, and in a recent case I was sure, I did buy online, indirectly,
Mhm,
but online.
mhm.
It's not
Uh,
something I would advise for a beginner collector, for instance.
mm. Do you work with advisors sometimes?
I'm
You
my own advisor. I
good.
actually advise people. Like many collectors, I'm doing what many collectors have done before me. That is, you start by collecting and then you become a private dealer because you know so much about the artist you're involved in that people start asking you for advice. So that's basically what I'm doing too. So I'm my own art advisor and I advise other people who are interested in the artists I'm interested in.
I see. Um, yeah, I ask this question to my guests, collectors. Is anything like optimal collection? I mean, like a book that we write or a painting, we say that okay, the artist says that the painting is finished. A collector can say that okay, this collection is optimal and it's I can lock it down, or
No, I don't think so. It's addictive, you know. Collecting is like an addiction, so you can't really stop. Your collection is never optimal. If it's optimal, it means that you lost the faith, the desire. So it doesn't make sense to call a collection optimal. Even Dr. Barnes, the famous Barnes Foundation in Philadelphia, he kept collecting until he died.
yeah.
And his collection is absolutely marvelous. He never considered it a perfect collection, so you can't, you can never stop. And the dealers are very happy about that because you're addicted.
Yeah, yes, but let me ask this question the other way around because uh, my idea is what kind of group of works we can call it a collection because we name collector, but when we examine the collection, it doesn't make sense. So for for a collection of works to satisfy a sensible collection, what are the minimum requirements? Like
Yeah, I see what you mean. Uh,
so when I say optimal, it's not okay time to
yeah,
stop a collection, but what is a meaningful
yeah, I see what you mean.
collection?
Okay, there are different types of collectors. You often meet people who are collecting art for social reasons. And those people who are maybe they like art, but they don't love art. So they end up having the same type of collection as their neighbors. So you may have one Picasso there, one George Condo there, one whoever there. If you have the big means, you got your Basquiat. If you have even bigger means, you have your Rothko, and that's it. I'm not criticizing this. This can happen. It's a very respectable way to collect, and if you have the means to do that, great. But these people collect more with what you say with their ears, meaning that they listen to other people and they think that having I mean, I'm saying Picasso. It could be any other fashionable artist. So they think that that's the good way to collect. Then you have other collectors like myself. I'm not saying I'm better than the other type, not at all. But it's another way of collecting. It's a long-term endeavor. I mean, I've been collecting for 20 years now, and I focus on the works I know. So that enables me, again, as long as I can afford that, to collect those artists in depth, meaning to have several works of the same artists, three, four, or two, or five, different periods, just to have a good array of works by the same artist. This is in-depth collecting. So these are the two main examples of collectors I know. well, of course, for the first type, you'd better have the means, the financial means to sustain your collection. Because if you're always buying the fashionable guy, you'll pay a lot more, obviously, than if you start early and buy in depth over the years. That's a different kind of approach. But if you can do it, why not? So there's no optimal collection. I know, of course, I'm speaking of the markets I know, which are the modern and contemporary markets. Of course, if you go to New York, and in some cases you go to you're invited to 5 different apartments, collectors' apartments, and you see the same works, basically.
Yes, this was mentioned in the documentary, the shot last year.
Yeah, I know the one you mean. Yeah, of course, it's kind of it may become boring, but it's still great to have a fantastic Basquiat in your living room, even though you just have one. And some people may say that it's not a collection. Well, I say it's a collection. If you just have one painting, but it's a marvelous Basquiat, well, why not? Huh? It's a great collection. That's also what I say. I mean, I knew. I can give you an example. One of the works by Philip Guston I chased it for almost 10 years, and it belonged to an old New York lady who had bought it very early in the 80s, when it really cost nothing. I think she paid $5,000 for that painting. And that was the only thing she had on her wall. It was a small painting, but the wall was very large, and she'd hung it in the middle of the wall, and it was absolutely fantastic. And she would never part with it. And that was the only painting she had. She finally sold it to me after a 10-year chase. But